Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure, by God's grace and His providence, to give us this time to be together. And definitely, if you're a child of God, you know the expectations from the commands of God to be here today to worship. And those of you that are visiting with us, we just want to encourage you to come back, and we all plan to be back together this afternoon at 5 o'clock. There are some people known in Scripture as Jews. Some are known as Gentiles. Others are known as Samaritans. And those people sometimes didn't get along with each other. It is known, according to the book of John chapter 4, where this woman of whom Jesus met at the well, she was astounded by the fact that there would be a Jew who would speak to someone who is a Samaritan, because of the history of how Jews would have no dealings with Samaritans. And then you would see demonstrations of the Gentiles that were people that were heathens. There were people that were just outsiders, that the Jewish people would look on them as people who would not have any means of hope, no promise to them. They are really the people who are the most corrupt known to man. Therefore, the Jews would have no dealings with Gentiles as well. The answer to those circumstances of whether that was a Jew or a Gentile or a Samaritan, and I might even add the idea of male or female, as well as bond or free. Whoever the circumstance, whatever the condition, there's always one solution to it and one person involved: Jesus the Christ. Jesus the Christ. Therefore, when you see circumstances that are going on in this world, not just in the country, but in the world, Israel and Syria, those people are so hostile to one another. They hate one another. There's enemies. There's bombing going on. There's fighting taking place. When you see that there's this spouse, a husband that hates his wife so much that he will take her and their 3 children, put them in a car, and run them off into a body of water so they all drowned. And then when you see, as we witnessed a little bit over a week ago, a man that was speaking, known to have conservative, traditional values, and then a young man who didn't like what was spoken, and take a gun and shoot him and kill him. It's no different than what I see in this world, where if you're a male, somebody will kill you. If you're a female, someone will abuse you. If you're black, if you're white, if you're from certain parts of the world, somebody will take you and take advantage of you in a lot of hostile and angry ways. Anger has become to be one of these realities. And the response to that reality is real just the same. Whether or not that's in a violent, abusive way, or whether it's in a very kind way, or as the book of Romans would speak of, that you put coals of fire upon their head. A lot of different reactions, a lot of different responses to those kind of things. Especially when it comes down to an individual who would take the life of one who is made in the image of God. In the book of Genesis chapter 9 and verse 6, of where God first talked about that, and how that did not become to be something he appreciated or valued or wanted to happen. I want you to turn with me and think about this as I talked to you last week, as I would talk about this week. Why would anyone hate me? There is an answer to that. And I'm going to answer some of that as we go along. But one of the answers to that is freedom. Freedom of speech. Freedom to carry a gun. Freedom because of a constitutional right that you have to live in this country, to have the lifestyle that you have. And as a result of that freedom, some people will not like the fact that you're free to do that, or believe that, or say that. And in a particular environment, they will mock you. They'll insult you. They will say ridiculing remarks. They will, in our day and time, they'll use these bullying terms to make you feel this small for what it is that you believe and what it is that you're doing. Lawsuits have come as a result of that. People have been fired from their jobs. People have divorced. And on the many scenarios of which some people have taken a way of which hatred is resolved in their mind because of the freedom that they've got. Rather than approaching it from a very humble, compassionate, kind, and in many cases biblical way. Well, if the Bible comes into the picture here as a means of a resource to resolve these matters, then some people will even hate that. To say, you don't need to legislate through this book what I do. The Bible has impacted so many people, for it has so many ways of answering hatred, anger, division, animosity, abuse, and violence. In a very meek and humble and truthful way, without all the harshness that you see, without all the condemnation that's taking place in the world. Notice these verses. Marvel not, brethren, if the world hateth you. We know that we have passed out of death into life because we love the brethren. He that loveth not abides in death. Whosoever hates his brother is a murderer, and you know that no murderer has eternal life abiding in him. Hereby know we love because he laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for the brethren. Whoever has the world's goods and beholds his brother and the one that's in need and shuts up his compassion from him, how does the love of God abide in him? My little children, let us not love in word, neither with the tongue, but in deed and in truth. Hereby shall you know that you're of the truth, and shall assure our hearts before him, because if our heart condemn us, God is greater than our heart, and knows all things. Beloved, if our heart condemn us not, we have boldness toward God, and whatsoever we ask, we receive of him, because we keep his commandments and do the things that are pleasing in his sight. One of the first things that you and I must understand about this idea of why would anyone hate me is the fact that we just don't need to be surprised about this. You could really go back to the days of Genesis chapter 3. A family relationship was so torn apart, such dilemma and chaos as a result of one brother killing another brother. And off it went to where people didn't really respect one another, have any regard for each other at all. In Matthew chapter 5, I'm sure Jason in his teaching of the book of Sermon and the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew chapter 5 has told you very clearly one of those beatitudes in chapter 5. In verse 10 talks about this very matter, that blessed are you when you will suffer right for righteousness' sake. But you should rejoice because of those things that do happen. In the text of Matthew chapter 10, it's no surprise when you hear Jesus, after his deliverance of this Sermon on the Mount in chapter 5, then it comes along and says in verse 24, a disciple is not above his teacher, nor a servant above his Lord. It is enough for the disciple that he is to be as his teacher and the servant of the Lord. If they have called the master of the house Beelzebub, how much more than them of his household? Would they say that you're a follower of the demon just like Jesus? Why, yeah. There was a case in the book of John where they were talking about Jesus as an individual who was a follower of Beelzebub and was that he couldn't do what he did unless a demon was in him. Just before, in the book of John chapter 15, where Jesus was about to be crucified upon the cross because of hate that existed, because of anger toward him, because of his speech, because of the teaching of truth, he introduced his apostles in verse 15 to verse 21 of the possibilities of it happening to them. No longer do I call you servants. He said, you did not choose me in verse 16, but I chose you that you should go and bear fruit and that your fruit should abide, that whatsoever you ask of the Father, it shall come to you in my name. These things I command you, that you may love one another. If the world hates you, you do know that it had hated me before it hated you. If you were of the world would love its own, but because you're not of the world, but I chose you out of the world, therefore the world hates you. And remember, it goes back to what it was stated in Matthew chapter 10. A servant is not greater than his Lord in verse 20. The similarities of which a person experiences hatred from others is just like Jesus was hated from the truth that he spoke. Therefore, when you go to the book of 1 Peter chapter 4, verses 12 to verse 16, he reiterates the same thing that John did in 1 John chapter 3. Beloved, think it not strange in verse 12 concerning the fiery trial that's among you, which comes upon you to prove you as though a strange thing happened to you. But insomuch as you were partakers of Christ's sufferings, rejoice that the revelation of the glory, that you may rejoice with exceeding joy. And the same thing that was stated back when Jesus mentioned that in the book of Matthew chapter 5. If you're reproached for the name of Christ, blessed are ye because the Spirit of the glory and the Spirit of God rest upon you. Let none of you suffer as a murderer or an evildoer or a thief or as a meddler in other men's matters. But if a man suffer as a Christian, let him not be ashamed, but let him glorify God in this name. Therefore, again, it's the unexpected. No, it's the expected. It's no surprise to us that this would happen. Let's just say you're given that information. You take this home with you as a result of just stop right here. And you know that there's not going to be any surprise of anybody mocking you, criticizing you, stumbling you, firing you, hating you, all those kind of things that would be in opposition to what you would see and value as truth from Scripture. When the apostles first heard this in the book of John chapter 15, and they knew this was going to happen, it got it there in their mind, what do you believe have been their first response to that? And we'll talk about that when we get to the book of Acts chapter 4 and chapter 5 in just a little bit. But what would have been the response? Initially, when they first were hated, first were mocked, first were insulted, first were abused, first put in prison, all those kind of things. Would it have been a surprise? Possibly, very possible. Even though you had it in the back of your mind that it might just be happening, and when it does for the first time, it could be a surprise. But then would you be constant in it? That you would back away and start compromising to say, I don't want this to ever happen again. I don't like this happening. I don't feel good when these kind of things are happening. If people start poking fun at you, are you going to stand for the truth, or are you going to back away from it? And realize this is of no surprise. This, according to 1 John 3, verse 13, marvel not, brethren, if the world hates you. Marvel not. That's a powerful thought. And here's the origin of this. Let's think about this just a minute. I'm going to pull two things in here. In the book of John, the 3rd chapter, if I were introducing you to Jesus, one of the things I would introduce you to is verse 16. God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes on him shall not perish but have everlasting life. Oh, that's a wonderful passage. And I would also introduce you to this. For God sent not the Son of the world to judge the world, but that the world should be saved through him. Judgment has become to be the kickoff word for anger and hate and opposition and division and separation and mockery and also the idea of blasphemy and on. Hostility, animosity, all those negative words that come along with the idea of hatred. Jesus came to the world out of love. Everybody loves verse 16. And knowing that Jesus came not to judge, but to save, even enhances the possibility of me coming to Jesus. But what's this? He that believeth on him is not judged. He that believeth not hath been judged already, because he hath not believed on the name of the only begotten Son of God. Well, now we're getting somewhere. This is a judgment that the light is come into the world, and men love the darkness rather than the light, for their works were evil. For everyone that does evil hates the light, and comes not to the light, lest his works be reproved. But he that does the truth comes to the light, that his works may be made manifest, that they have been wrought in God. Where is the origin of the hate? It's from the heart of the person who's living in darkness that doesn't like the light exposing them. Let me give you an example of that. 3 o'clock in the morning, you're dead asleep. Whether it's your child or anybody else that comes to the room and they got this flashlight that's big. It's got LED brightness that enhances any room. And they come and they turn that light on right in your face. First impressions are, I don't like that person. I don't like that person. Because they revealed something to you that you did not want revealed. Disrupting your darkness. Disrupting your sleep. When the light came to the world that you know Jesus would be in John chapter 8, verse 12, when that light starts teaching, please know, he's not coming to say, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. You better do this, do this. He is preaching and teaching light and love. And the exposure of that darkness by the light is what brings the hatred. Therefore, the fiery ordeal of which we might experience in the book of 1 Peter chapter 4, it's for your testing. It's to test to see if you're going to follow the light or if you're going to turn hostile like many unbelievers do and want to stay right there in the darkness. Now, I will say this. It doesn't make sense to me, and I have a hard time understanding why it would be that the exposure of a light to a dark moment would in any way enhance anger and hatred. When you look at John the 3rd chapter, yet at the same time, even though I might not understand, I'm not surprised by it, no matter the times we're told. I want to tell you, I'm just from a preacher's standpoint, there have been numerous times after I would preach a lesson on truth on a particular subject, there would be people that will walk right by me with intense anger. I just knew it. They would not stick out their hand. They would not in any way recognize the fact that I was there. But the fact is, you speak this truth, and as a result, they'll just walk right on by you. And in some cases, if you call them and talk to them about it, they're not interested. And I'm sure that that's probably happened in some degree to you, especially to your family. And your family doesn't have anything to do with you because of hatred, anger. And they're hostile to your way of life. So that's point number one. Here's point number two. I see in the book of Galatians chapter 5 something very, very significant here. Very, very truthful, eye-opening to me. That the reason you see what you see as anger toward you, or why would anybody hate you, is because of Galatians chapter 5. The battle between the flesh and the spirit. And I want you to see that the text talks about in verse 17 The flesh lusts against the Spirit, and the Spirit against the flesh. For these are contrary the one to the other, that you may not do the things that you would. But if you're led by the Spirit, you're not under the law. Now the works of the flesh are manifest. And he begins to talk about all those things in verse 19, 20, and 21. And there's a long list of those things. Then in verse 22, he goes opposite and says the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, kindness, and goodness, and meekness. And then he says there is no law against this. And they that are of the Christ Jesus have crucified the flesh with the passions and the lust thereof. We live by the Spirit. This is a very, very crucial point. We live by the Spirit let us also walk. Now what's the result of that is, he emphasizes it even more. And those 3 points in verse 26 are very, very glaring. We live by the Spirit let us also walk. Let us not become vainglorious, proud, egotistical. We know it all. Nobody can tell us any different. Provoking one another and envying one another. Do you know that many times the matter of hatred and anger, division, animosity, killings, abuse, violence come as a result of verse 26. Vainglorious people, people that provoke one another, challenging them, and then envy what it is that they got or what it is that they do. Or like in Jesus' case, oh, you got all these multitudes of people. They're so jealous about all these multitudes of people following him. All this brought about the killing of Jesus on the cross. And all of those things in verse 26 bring about hatred and anger and animosity. Such a very, very interesting thing. And it is so telling to me that if you looked at the list of verse 19 and 21, every one of those things, there's a law against it. Whether it's the law of God, a civil law, national law, there's a law against it. And the ones in verse 22 to verse 23, there's no law against that. Now, people may object to how you love or your joy or your patience, but there's no law against that. So let me let you look at this list real quick. All the things that are stated here, and look at that list. Which would you rather be? Which would you rather be? Not which you wish everybody else was. Which one of these people would you rather live with? Who would you rather go to school with? Who would you like to be your neighbor? Who would you like to be working with? Which side of the spectrum would you look at? And while you might be surprised at this, those people on the left, and I don't use that in a political term, but those people on this list on the left view those people on the right in a very a form of animosity, hatred, and division. They don't like the way they're living. The jealous people don't like the people of joy. The people that are full of sorcery do not like the people that are self-controlled. The people that are full of the parties and envies do not like the people that are kind of good. And they don't want light shining on their life. They don't want there to be a law against that. And as a result, there's hatred that comes. And I must include this, even in the text, among brethren in Christ. This is really gets down to the nitty-gritty of this. We may talk about all the hatred and the animosity and the anger and division in the world, but what about real close to home, the envy and the provoking and the vainglorious attitudes of brethren? What's the response going to be? The response is going to be anger. The response is going to be hatred. And even though those people on the right up here are generous and kind and meek and good, and they don't want to gossip, and they want to be people that are in the local communities and even the churches and schools and doing the things they should, still those people on the left are going to criticize and belittle them for what it is that they do. And we should not be surprised, yet we should be people who will be the folks that want to do things not against the law, but in harmony with and in unity with God's will. and how we should behave. Don't be surprised. So what do? I'm going to go through this list. I don't have a lot. I knew that when I got started, I probably wouldn't have a lot of time to get through this, but I'm going to do the very best I can. I run across so many more things I'd love to say. But let's just go through this and let's understand something very clearly. We have got to remember that we were enemies. We were people, according to Isaiah chapter 59, verse 1 and verse 2, God would not hear because of our iniquities, because of our sin. According to the text that Daniel was reading a while ago in the book of Romans chapter 5, we were enemies. We were enemies. And it would be hard to find even a just man that would die for the ungodly. We are the people, according to what you see in the book of 1 John chapter 3, where you see these words that he mentions in verse 13, marvel not, brethren, that the world hates you. We know that we have passed out of death into life because we love the brethren. We have passed out of death to life. Just keep that in mind. Just make sure that you focus upon your redemption and that you were the one that one time was an enemy. It's very similar to 1 Corinthians chapter 6. We now have been washed. We've been sanctified. We've been justified. We were once the people that were stated in verse 9 as well as verse 10 of the book of 1 Corinthians. But now we've been transformed and we've been sanctified. Number 2, love one another. Robert was just leading us in that song just a moment ago in verse 14. Love one another, verse 14. And those things are so important that we would be willing to do that. Because the love of God is what has brought us to the point of salvation. As a result, that love, according to 1 John chapter 4's case, in verse 7, verse 8, is an indication that you're on his side. And you're not full of retaliation. You're not full of revenge. You're not shameful. You're going to be the one that's convicted and you love one another. And even if it were to be something that would bring fire up on the heads of other people. And we're not calling down fire up on the people that are our enemies and say, God, you got to get rid of all these people. They're really hassling me. John stated in John chapter 13 from the voice of Jesus in verse 34, men will know that you're my disciples if you love one another. Number 3, sacrifice one another. Sacrifice was made for us. And giving for the brethren may not be easy all the time. Giving of us to other people that don't like us isn't convenient. In a lot of cases, it's not easy either. But it's sacrificing is very important. I'm going to refer back to Jesus here in John chapter 15. What did he do? He laid down his life for his friends. And he laid down his life for enemies. Just the same. But then number 4 is you help one another. The person that withholds what it is that they have, in verse 17, shuts up their compassion. How does the love of God abide in him? And you know the answer to that question. So therefore the opposite would be true. Well, they don't like them. They hate them. They just don't have any regard for them whatsoever. So that's the solution to this. They do what they can to help one another. Hatred doesn't want to do anything for anybody else. Hatred has no intense purpose to do anything of value to the other person because it will put them in a better position than themselves. What I think so much about this point, when Jesus came into the city of Jerusalem, and a lot of people in the city did not like him, in the book of Matthew chapter 23, and he talked about, and made it really even worse, when he's talking about woe to you, woe to you, woe to you, hypocrites. That's the word he used. Truthful, because there were so much inconsistencies that were happening among the Jews. And he goes into the city, and what would he do to the enemies? He says in verse 37, he would rather gather them as a hen would gather their chickens under his wings, but you would not. And the thing is, Jesus sends all these people, these prophets, everybody, including himself. It's very similar to the parable of the husbandman. He sends all these efforts to the lives of the people, but they refuse it. And you think, what's the point of doing any of this? Because you want to bring them to God. But here's this one. assure your heart with truth. I should have put this point too. I didn't do it. Assure your heart with truth, comma, not justice. Assure your heart with truth, comma, not justice. Truth sets you free. John chapter 8 and verse 32. The world wants to separate your freedom from their freedom. People that are Christians, they want to separate your freedom from their freedom. They want to be free to have a lifestyle. They want to be free to do the things. They want to be free to be modest. They want to be free to do whatever it is they want to do. They want to be able to say it. But your freedom is ridiculous. Your freedom is absolute out of ignorance, and it's a part of foolishness. You don't know what it is that you're doing. Yet Jesus was the one in the book of Luke chapter 23 verse 34, looking upon those people down below him and says, Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing. They don't know. They may think this is truth, but it's not. And you and I have got to know that truth is more powerful than deception and lies. Because truth is so consistent, it's constant, it's enduring. Lies, you got to change them all the time. You've got to change them based upon the circumstance and the situation. You have got to change what you say and what you do, because it's a deceiving thing. You're lying to yourself, you're lying to other people. But in the case of 1 John chapter 3, he says we need to assure our hearts of the truth. Speak the truth, live the truth, practice the truth, have a hunger for it. And here's why. You don't have to turn there, but I'm going to read this to you. Romans chapter 2. One of the problems that the truth had was belief in it and practice of it among the Jews, because they thought they were the people. And they were definitely hypocrites. But here's the thing about the truth in verse 24. No, I'm sorry, verse 23. Romans chapter 2. For who glories in the law through thy transgression of the law dishonors thou God? For the name of God is blasphemed among the Gentiles because of you, even as is written. And he goes on to talk about circumcision and uncircumcision. The name of God is blasphemed among the Gentiles because of you. It's not because of hate speech or speech that people hate. It is because there are people who say they follow the truth but do not consistently believe it and practice it. They're not truly assured with it. All they want to do is be the judge, the justice part. Folks, full, satisfied justice will not take place until the end of time. So let's get away from that part and let's see what we can do. And in that judgment, no one gets away from it. No one escapes from it. But we're the people that today should be assured of the truth and not try to level the playing field by taking out what people have done to us in a matter of revenge and compromise, or just literally hating you. But we need to be convicted and full of faithfulness and let the truth prevail through us. Just like Paul was talking about in 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 12. I know who I believe. State that belief, because you're going to be answering for it. 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 15. Commit yourself to it. Because the people that are faithful to the Lord, according to 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 19, do this. And most especially when you think about Romans chapter 12, verse 21, be overcome of evil? No. But overcome evil with good. Just do the opposite. Total opposite. In view of the fact that people will hate you when you do it. Truth that's believed and obeyed and lived is what prevents blasphemy. Our effort is not to be justice and judges, but just like Jesus, come with truth, come with love to save them, in order to prevent blasphemy, to make sure that we're not having people accuse us of something that is hypocritical, inconsistent, but we are the people who love God. I thank you for your patience, but I have one more illustration here to help us understand the value of this in the book of Acts chapter 5. Those people in the world who hate us should be because of truth, should be because of righteousness' sake. And they need to know about this example. Chapter 4, the apostles were told, do not declare anything about Jesus to anybody. Don't go anywhere to do this. Chapter 5, the high priest rose up in verse 17. They were filled with jealousy, which is one of those things like the works of the flesh. They laid their hands on the apostles, put them in prison. Angel got them out in verse 19, verse 20, and said, go into the streets, go and speak in the temple all the words of this life. That's Jesus. They get out there and do it. Next thing you know, they're called on the carpet. And when they had brought them in verse 27, they set them before the council and said, we strictly charge you not to say anything and teach in this name. And notice this, you filled Jerusalem with his teaching. And you have put the blood of this man upon our heads. No, they did not. Absolutely not. Yet they did actually fill the city with truth. They were not bringing the blood of this man upon them. Peter says, we must obey God rather than man. I value this, and I'd love to get into this a little bit more, but I would tell you this. There's a real smart doctor that comes along and says, hey, you got to know something about what these men are doing. You got to know that there was a man named Theudas that did something just like this. And there's a man named Judas in verse 37 that did just something just like this. Next thing you know, they both died and they're gone. He says, you better stop what you're doing. Let them alone, for if this counsel, this work be of men, it will be overthrown. Don't, just let it go. But if it is of God, you will not be able to overthrow them, lest happily you be found even to the fighting against God. If a great persecution came upon us, what do you think is going to happen? That's a smart guy that says what he did. You can't stop God. God's way will not be defeated. That's why he says in Ephesians 6, put on the whole armor of God. It is really devastating to know that there will be someone who would turn away and reject what it is that you're doing for them. And for Jesus, that was true. I don't know all the ends, but for us, it's sad. It aches our heart. We just can't believe people would say these kind of things. We just can't believe. It's just hard to accept that. And Jesus did it anyway through the plan that God had. And he wants to save us. And we've got to be the people who will let him do it. Let him save you. And let him turn your past into something that's new, so that way you will be redeemed before him, and you will know that following God will not be defeated. No matter if you die for righteousness' sake, you're abused for righteousness' sake, you're violated for righteousness' sake, you're demeaned for it, you're ridiculed for it, you stay with it. I must do that, and all of us should. But if you transgress God and you're compromising, you need to repent and change. Don't stand in the middle, and don't do like a lot of these evangelical churches are doing. For you see, their solution to this is we need to make sure we have more classes for the clubs that we were introduced from the younger, the older. They're trying to resolve it, and you stay away from the word sin, stay away from the word judgment, stay away from the word hell. You put those on the shelf, and you bring all those people in because we want the world to like us. Folks, that's not the New Testament church. That's not the Christian. Be a believer. For it's better to suffer as a believer than it would be for one that's in sin. Do what's right. Well, together we sing this song.